The whispering walls of Gorask. In the heart of the Balkan mountains lay the forgotten town of Gorask. Its cobblestone streets, old stone houses and overgrown gardens gave it an air of timelessness. Yet there was a silence about the town, a kind of hush that felt unnatural. It wasn't just the absence of tourists or the quiet way the townspeople spoke. It was the weight of a secret, an ancient darkness tied to the old school on the hill. Domna Akademija. The school had once been a grand boarding academy for the wealthy. Its tall spires and Gothic architecture stood as a symbol of power and privilege. But over time, stories began to spread. Stories of strange noises, missing children, and teachers who whispered to walls as if they were alive. Then, one winter night, the entire school was abandoned. The gates were locked, the doors shut, and the building left to rot. For decades, the townsfolk avoided it, calling it the House of Echoes. They said the school wasn't empty, that it lived, that it remembered. One crisp autumn morning, a team of archaeologists arrived in Gorask. Their goal was to document the town's history, focusing on its mysterious landmarks. Among them was Anya, a determined young researcher with a passion for uncovering secrets. She was joined by Milan, a historian with a skeptical mind, and Petra, a photographer who loved the thrill of exploring the unknown. The trio checked into the town's only inn, where they quickly learned about Domna Akademija. The locals were tight-lipped, speaking only in whispers about the school. "Stay away from it," an old man at the inn warned, his voice trembling. "The school isn't just haunted, it's alive. It takes people." Anya, curious and confident, dismissed the man's warnings. "It's just an old building," she said. "There must be a logical explanation for the stories." Her teammates weren't so sure, but Anya convinced them to investigate. "If we don't, we're missing the most interesting part of this town," she argued. Reluctantly, Milan and Petra agreed. The next morning, the three set off for Domna Akademija. The path up the hill was overgrown with weeds and brambles, as if nature itself was trying to hide the building. When they reached the top, the school loomed before them, its tall spires piercing the grey sky. The building was in ruins. Ivy covered the stone walls, and the windows were broken, dark like empty eye sockets. Yet, despite its decay, it felt alive. "This place is unsettling," Petra whispered, holding her camera tightly. Anya pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly, echoing through the empty halls. Inside, the air was damp and cold. Dust floated in the weak sunlight that streamed through the broken windows. The walls were lined with old portraits of students and teachers. Their painted eyes seemed to follow the group as they moved. "Creepy, but it's just a trick of the light," Milan said, though his voice betrayed unease. As they walked deeper into the school, faint whispers began to echo around them. At first, they thought it was the wind, but soon the whispers grew clearer, more human. "Anya," a soft voice called. Anya froze. "Did you hear that?" Her friends shook their heads, but the whispers continued, faint yet persistent. They explored room after room, finding old desks, broken chairs, and books rotting on the floor. Then they discovered a spiral staircase leading down into darkness. The air grew colder as they descended, the stone steps slick with moisture. At the bottom, they found a heavy iron door covered in strange symbols. Milan ran his fingers over the carvings. "These symbols, they're ancient. Pagan, maybe. They don't belong here." Before they could discuss further, the door creaked open on its own. Beyond it was a massive underground room, dimly lit by an eerie green glow. Rows of desks and chairs were arranged neatly, as if waiting for a class. But the chairs weren't empty. Shadowy figures sat in them, their heads bowed. "Are those people?" Petra asked, her voice shaking. Anya stepped closer, her camera in hand. She snapped a photo, and the flash revealed the truth. The figures were dried, mummified corpses, their hollow eyes staring straight at the group. The whispers grew louder, angrier, filling the room with a deafening hum. The corpses began to move, their heads jerking unnaturally as they turned to face the intruders. "Run!" Milan shouted. The three of them bolted up the stairs, but the school had changed. Hallways stretched endlessly, doors slammed shut, and the whispers turned into screams. Petra tripped, her camera skidding across the floor. Milan tried to help her, but shadowy hands emerged from the walls, grabbing her arms and legs. She screamed as she was pulled into the darkness. Her voice abruptly cut off. "Petra!" Anja cried, but Milan pulled her away. "We can't save her. We have to go." They ran, the walls groaning and pulsing as if they were alive. The floorboards cracked beneath their feet, and the shadows closed in around them. The pair stumbled into a large room. It was the headmaster's office, untouched by time. A massive desk stood in the center, and on it lay an open ledger. Milan flipped through the pages. "These are names," he said, his hands trembling. Anya looked over his shoulder. The names were of the townspeople, written in careful handwriting. At the bottom of the list, she saw her own name, written in fresh ink. Below it was Petra's name, crossed out. "What does this mean?" Anya whispered, her voice shaking. Before Milan could answer, the whispers stopped, replaced by a deep, guttural voice. "Welcome home, Anya. You belong to us now." The room plunged into darkness. Anya felt Milan's hand slip away, and when the light returned, he was gone. She was alone. The ledger on the desk glowed faintly. Anya's name pulsed on the page, as if alive. The whispers returned, soft and mocking. The voice spoke again. "This place remembers. It keeps what it is given. You are ours now." The walls began to close in, the air growing heavier. Anya tried to run, but the door wouldn't open. Shadows crept toward her, their bony hands reaching out. Her screams echoed through the school, joining the chorus of whispers. Anya, Milan, and Petra were never seen again. The townsfolk noticed new names carved into the stone pillars at the school's entrance: Anya, Milan, Petra, alongside dozens of others. Months later, a new group of visitors arrived in Gorask, curious about the haunted school. They asked the innkeeper about Domna Akademija, but he only shook his head. "The school is always hungry," he said, "and it always finds someone to feed it." As the visitors made their way up the hill, the whispers began again, soft and eager.